All right, so we're going to give the floor to Seth. Very excited to watch this presentation and get the perspective of somebody, especially newer hams that are coming into seeing what you can do and doing something that's most old hams probably haven't gotten a chance to do either. So definitely will be a great presentation. So I'll take it away.
Great, thank you. I've got audio. I sound good. Everything's good. Awesome. So okay, good. So I made a presentation, First Contact, a newbie's wild ride into a dxpedition. So this was to KP2, which is the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Tortola, which is British Virgin Islands. And again, my name is Seth McAllister, KD9TAW, and we'll walk through kind of my journey through here. So a little bit about me. I was licensed in 2021, but I never really operated on the air for about a year after that. And it wasn't until about 2022, I got pretty serious. I got, some great Elmers in this group. There's a number of people that kind of helped me along the way and got, despite, that's why I did well. That's why I did well. Yeah, so I currently live in Bull Valley with my wife, Laura. I've got a 30-year career as kind of an IT geek, so I've worked in IT. I was telling someone else I'm more nervous about this than when I present, and I do this all the time for my corporate job, but you all are very smart, and I just appreciate it. So passionate about chasing DX. And the last one, my disclaimer, I reserve the right to make mistakes. I'm still a total newbie. I might say things that are incorrect. You can throw tomatoes at me or correct me after it.
Look, you feed your audience first, and then they'll be
get everyone tired. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So this initially started out with just a vacation. So Laura and I had been talking like we want to go somewhere warm. We wanted to go somewhere in the spring. And around that time, I'd been talking to Mark on 9UM, and he said, there's this great place out there, the British Virgin Islands, and it's the 113th most wanted. You should consider that. So I had already been looking at the U.S. Virgin Islands at that point. So it was a natural shift to start to look at, well, how could I bring my radio with this? So, thankfully, my wife is very understanding, and she let me tote around tons of gear. But we wanted to kind of mix a bit of fun with radio operations, starting with the fun part in the U.S. Virgin Islands with just a little radio, and then leading up to a very nice villa that I got her with a pool next to the ocean so she could swim while I operated pretty extensively there. Some other goals, I wanted to operate SO2R. So I really wanted to do FT8 and SSB. There were some challenges with that. I'll talk about that a little later. And I wanted to do MSHV with five streams for FT8. I really wanted to look at how I could, get as many QSOs as I could. And I went back and forth between MSHV, Fox and Hound. Initially and eventually settled on MSHV just because of the simplicity there. Split time between KP2 and VP2. Major focus was on VP2. And wanted a great location for antennas. And I'll talk about the different strategy I did. I wanted one location that was very high. So I actually was able to make it to the very top of the tallest point on the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I wanted someplace right by the ocean. And I wanted to do the best I could do. So, this was fun, but I'm a serious person. So I had a lot of try hard going into this. A little bit about licensing. So while in KP2, I operated under U.S. privileges. No other licenses needed for that. I just operated off my U.S. license there. VP2 was a little bit different. I had to get a reciprocal license. I had to apply to the local telecommunications agency on BVI. And it involved a bit of a process. I had to fill out forms. I had to pay some money. They even wanted it notarized. I had to get copies of my ID. So I went through all that hoops there, and it took about 3 weeks to a month to get the license. So all in all, it was an easy process. Telecommunications person was great. Gave me a list of other hams on the island. Never was able to contact any of them. The one repeater on the island was completely dead in VP2V. And so we have a license. It was good for 1 year. Interesting, I thought it was limited to 400 watts output. So I was going barefoot, only 100 watts was not a big deal to me. But in future ones, I wonder what the consideration would be if I wanted to run power. As I mentioned, 3 weeks to a month to get this license and get it as early as possible. So if anyone's going to do this, like the important part is the earlier you can get this license. Most of them that I've found are good for a year. So earlier is the better on this one. So a little bit about my equipment list. So lightweight, zero redundancy. If anything failed, I was screwed. So if I was to do this again, I would have some other redundancy in power supplies and a few different things, but I was bare minimum. Partly because I had the initial thought I wanted to stay underneath the flight restrictions of 65 pounds with my bag. Come to find out once I packed, I was wildly over that, and I should have actually brought more gear because I paid the fees for like an extra 5 or 10 pounds in this bag. So what did I bring? I brought an FTDX10 for SSB with the option for digital, a Yaesu 991 that was going to be digitally exclusive, a DX Commander Expedition with a 40, 30, 20, 17, and 10 element. So that is actually one extra element than the DX Commander even recommends putting on there. I put a 30 element on it. Didn't notice any difference in SWR, worked great. So, you know, I had a total of, 5 elements on there. And I also had a Chameleon 8010 end-fed half-wave sloper. I had a small Lenovo laptop with me and an AMD micro PC with a little USB monitor about that big. So I did a lot of squinting during the dxpedition. I had dual top power STP 1330s. These are from China. They're very cheap, but they're also very light. Those worked great for me. Case-wise, I settled on a Pelican Air 1615, and I had an all-up weight in that case at 78 pounds. And I had some other gear in another bag. The DX Commander went in another bag, along with some coax, but I mostly got it in, and I'll have pictures of that, of what that actually looks like. 125 feet of LMR 240, 100 feet of RG8XLL. I had one networking switch, a Heil Pro set, a foot switch, USB GPS dongles, power strips, extension cables, coax tape, Velcro silicone, markers, earth anchors, rope, and throwing weight. I think that's everything. I had some, smaller things too, but that's the majority of kind of what went in my kit. So how did I prepare? So I learned a lesson that if you're going to go on one of these and you sign up for a stroke call sign on QRZ, I didn't realize that triggers a whirlwind of all these dxpedition news sites that just decided to make my own QSL cards for me and start running out the press. So I wasn't even ready to tell anyone about this, but as soon as I registered that stroke, the floodgates open. I was getting emails flying in. People were making blog posts. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So if you are going to register a stroke call sign, be aware of that. So once the gates were open, I said, well, I guess we're doing this. So I contacted several dxpedition news sites. So NG3K put it on their dxpedition calendar. DX World wrote an article about it. I posted it to some Facebook sites, and Mark had a good recommendation. He said, why don't you run a poll out there to see who actually needs what bands for VP2V? And that was actually very effective. So I ran a poll, and that allowed me to kind of corral what I was gonna operate during that time period. And I set everything up for a Parks in the Air. So this was a big Parks in the Air, but I wanted to do a kind of a drill with this by setting everything up. What did I miss? Is it all working okay? My little helper Ruby there, she's there to support. So practice makes not perfect. There was a number of things I found that I made slight adjustments, but I mostly had everything. Like through all that planning, it mostly worked out okay. It was just a couple tweaks and smaller things that I needed. And most of it packed in the Pelican case. So the Pelican case comes with this little squishy stuff. You can pick and pull that out of there. I could have done a better job at this. And really by getting, that much stuff in there, it was kind of 5 pounds of stuff, or it's 20 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. It all kind of held together quite well. If you see on here, I actually put a letter to the TSA. So I figured if they were going to open this up, I wanted them to know, A, here's what I'm doing, and for customs, because I went through multiple customs. And behind this is my license, not only US license, but I provided my operating license in Virgin Islands as well. I locked it. I had a fragile sticker that never came, but so we're on our way. That's my wife Laura and I when we landed in the US Virgin Islands. And this over here is everything that we brought. So 80% of my radio gear fit in here. We put a couple antennas and coax in here and our clothes, and we were on our way. Each of us had 2 hands full in a backpack, and that was kind of a requirement, is we had to be mobile enough, we didn't need carts. So this was my QTH on St. John's. So this is the tallest point in St. John right here. And this was a cool spot. I mean, this was just absolutely beautiful. You can see middle, this was the peak right here. We were right next to a national park, and we just had some of the most epic views. And the US was kind of out northwest of here. It's 1,260 feet above sea level. So as a Caribbean island, that's pretty tall. We had to climb with the truck to get up there. And it's the highest point. So we set up, that was really rocky. So the first thing I did, you can see my excitement in the lower right. I was just so excited to put up the first antenna out there. It was so warm, super rocky. It was a little rough getting the ground spikes in, but we got it done. And I had helpers along the way. So we had some donkeys. We had these goats just lived in our area. And I just walked through the area the whole time. And yeah, they were fun. They didn't mess with anything, but they were always there for entertainment. And this was my view here. It was a rough life here. So so it was pretty tall and very modest QTH. So this was meant to have fun here. We did a ton of hiking, and it was meant to be kind of a pre-wire for British Virgin Islands, where we're going to get serious, test the gear again, and kind of go through that. So I mostly operated mornings and evenings, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. And we had some good off-air time. We went to the beach. We hiked. We sat and drank cocktails. That was great. That was all part of the trip. And we had some good QSO results here. So operated between 414 and 418, 22 hours total operating time. So I guess 4 days, that was still pretty significant. Logged 936 contacts there, 774 unique call signs, 407 grid squares. It was all FT8 here. I didn't, when I'm operating outside, it was just too windy at that altitude to even talk on voice. That was KP2. Here's a visual representation of the QSOs I made there. A lot of Europe, a lot of Eastern United States, some Russia. Russia was a consistent player in this whole thing. So this was the big trip. So I had some other videos in here. We took a boat over here, which was, for those that have watched dxpedition videos, it was like really kind of ceremonial of getting on the boat and sitting up front and actually going to the next island. So it's just a really cool experience. And this is where we set up. I mean, we were right next to the ocean in a really interesting spot. So I chose it for the proximity to water. It's 10 foot from the ocean on the DX Commander. There was huge cliffs around the bay, and I'll show you a picture of this. And it was incredibly quiet. There was virtually no noise, and just the distance I could get was just, it seemed like it was endless with the propagation and just the where we were. And, US also where I chose. So I chose a lot of these spots for specific characteristics. Takeoff angle of the United States, plus it was just a really cool spot. So this is the bay. You can see how tall these hills were. And the QTH was right down here in the back of the bay. And these were hundreds of feet tall down here. I got a really nice villa for Laura. So I wanted to be able to operate, and she said, I just want to swim and hang out. So I said, great. So we got a beautiful villa there. Just give you a little tour. And I spent a lot of time operating outside here too, because it was just too nice not to. So we set up the DX Commander, same configuration as before. I had usable frequencies on 40, 30, 20, 17, 15, 12, 10, and 6-ish. So I had a little bit of a fold over, but it was enough to make a number of 6-meter contacts at both locations as well. Now, here's where things went south and could have gone very south. The Leviti Stout, I didn't know, was one of the people that were like the huge political families in VP2V. And they had been part of kind of the main political scene there since the mid-60s. And I got everything set up, and all of a sudden I get a text from my host, because we were in Airbnb, and they said, what is the black antenna set up in the yard? And really came through asking me a million questions. Come to find out, the person I was renting the Airbnb from was the daughter, the granddaughter of this person. And when I got there, there was all these trucks and cars running around with speakers playing loud music about the voting, because there was a voting election the very next week. What did they think I was doing? They thought I was monitoring because the neighbor right next to me was the part of the security detail for the political party that was voting in. So there's a lot of questions, right? And one big learning out of this, I didn't ask for permission. I've gone to a ton of Airbnbs. I set up my stuff, do everything, never a problem, right? Just happened to stumble upon one of like the main political leaders Airbnb at here. So I talked my way out of this. She had a lot of questions, how much power is being operated, sent the licenses. I'm sure she checked with the telecommunications area. And they thought it was being highly monitored. They thought I was literally there monitoring the people next door. So she backed off. It all ended up fine, but that was a big learning, is seek permission if you're going to do this. Don't pull a Seth. So I was getting things online. So this is my primary QTH setup. You can see my little monitor there. And I thought a lot about logging. Like that was something that I'd planned a lot for. How was I going to log? What was the internet going to be? And I had initially set up this really big spider web of logging, probably like we all have at our house, to log automatically to ClubLog, to feed a map on ClubLog, to log to LOTW. I kind of threw that all away once I was at KP2 because I didn't have good internet there. So I fell back on logging purely to MSHV and then nightly just pushing logs up. And that for me was simple, would be better. Another thing I wondered about was, what do I do with QSL cards? Like, I'm horrible at that. I can't even send people letters back, let alone send QSL cards. So I'm just not good at that. So eventually, Pedro Mansell reached out. She's done a lot of dxpedition QSL cards and acted as a manager. And he provides this service for free. So he said, listen, I'll handle all your QSLs. I'll make your QSL cards. I'll print them and I'll send them out to everyone. And I don't want a dime. And I'm still trying to think how this works, but he said he just loves it. I ended up donating to him. I said, thank you. Here's some capital to keep you going on this, but it was really cool. And he handled all my direct QSL cards, with the exception of those folks here locally. Yes, Mark?
He makes his money on the people requesting for. He makes it up. Whatever that number is.
That's why it's a newbie's dxpedition. See, that's good advice. So it was a great process, and they handled all the paper ones. I'm not sure how many were actually sent out. It was a little bit disconnected for me. I think if I did it again, I'd keep that process a little closer because, you know, I don't know who got them. I'm sure plenty of people didn't get them. But yeah, so that worked well as well. And that's a copy of my QSL card there. It's cool graphics in the back. It was also an IOTA. I didn't know that either. But I guess it was an IOTA activation I learned after the fact as well. I don't think I even knew what IOTA was when I went on this. I do now. The Tortola is beautiful. These are some pictures like unchanged here. I didn't put filters on these at all. Some great food we had, but we mostly stayed at the QTH, I'd say, for the trip. So only had a shorter operation here, only 3 days really, the 18th to the 20th. And in that period of time, I operated 44 hours totally. I logged 6,022 contacts, 3,020 unique call signs, worked 96 countries, 824 grid squares, 5,748 contacts over FT8, and 274 over single sideband. 10 meter was super active, 30 meter was super active, along with 20 and 15. But they're all pretty good. I had, at KP2, I think I had 15 6-meter contacts here. I only had 1. Good map of kind of everything we taught, everything I contacted out there. Quite a bit of Asia later on in the trip. That was pretty quiet early, but that got better the longer I was there. Ton of Russia and much more higher density of people in the United States. And I think that's not, to me, that's not due to any propagation. That was just due to the demand for VP2V versus KP2 that I was at. So what would I do differently next time? I would plan earlier, and there will be a next time because I'm planning to do another one of these too. Gain full permission of the property owner. I think that's the big one that I would have taken from this whole thing. And think about backups like power supplies. I'm still kind of in the camp of going pretty lean and mean. I think if I really needed something, I probably could have got a hold of some local hams. They probably could have helped, but I probably would bring an extra power supply next time. Small antenna tuner. I had one of these before. I was not going to lug this with me. It was just too heavy. An amplifier. So I've recently purchased an amplifier as well. So my goal for my next one to have some power. I'd probably swap out my sloper for a lightweight hex beam. Even though that'd be a bit of a bear to lug around, I think that would be pretty neat, especially on the ocean. And I just can't wait to go somewhere else. Another interesting fact that I totally overlooked too, VP2V, 6-meter SSB hasn't been on the air for 11 years. 160 SSB hasn't been active for 9 years. So like if I would have looked at that, I don't know if I would have brought options for that, but I would have strongly considered that. So that's just a bit as I learned as I planned through this on things I might have been able to do differently there. Never been active on 60. So just a couple of special thanks. So first off, Mark in the back there, he helped me tremendously. I bet I had a million questions leading up to this and annoyed the hell out of him asking 8,000 questions as we move through this. And the coolest thing was when I got here, he'll say he doesn't, but he completely twisted his schedule around. So he was there for me like the entire second of the dxpedition. He spotted for me. He shot me propagation, operation strategies. So just huge thanks to Mark. Sam, you had a lot of ideas too, planning considerations, always a good planner. So thank you, sir. And all of you, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do this, been inspired to do this if it wasn't for kind of everyone's support in the club between MCW and 415. And that's it. If you want to contact me, there's my email. I think I did just enough time for answer any questions if anyone has any.
Did you have internet available at these 2 sites?
I was supposed to have them at both sites. KP2, I did not have great internet at all. It was just too remote. It was too high. So that's kind of when I made the logging changes. I had exceptional internet when I was at VP2V, but I already kind of tore apart the logging and simplified it. Zoom people do.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, talk about how well you could hear down there in propagation to, the British Virgin Islands versus W9, where it just sucks.
Yeah.
And how the propagation there is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
From JA or wherever.
Yeah, it was unbelievable everywhere, it seemed like. And I'm not sure how all the math works, but I think when you run multi-stream, it roughly splits my 100 watts into, I guess, 20 watts a stream. So, I was all over the world with roughly 20 watts per stream.
So since none of us have worked multi-stream, what is that like? I mean, was it hard to set up?
Really easy to set up, and it kind of feels like cheating because it's not automated in a sense, but it is. So like as soon as you put my call out from VP2V and the flood comes in, it will just automatically work those. And it just works from 5 at a time. So a lot of it was just kind of monitoring. The one thing I didn't say, I didn't ever get to operate SO2R because I didn't have the guts to put up the second antenna after I just got yelled at by the political folks. So it would have been involving stringing more wires around their house, and I don't think I barely kind of was able to operate it as it is. So I did not do SO2R. So that, that's a learning for next year.
How many people work SAP?
That's a good question. Perfect.
Multiple bands?
I still think you're the winner, Sam. I think you worked him everywhere, including on your microwave.
Yeah. And I did contact Gary at the Makers Fair as well. We did contact the Makers Fair from KP2.
I think there was a couple kids.
We were using just an end fed tied to a pine tree out in the front. I said, hey, I think I can hear a sound. I called out for him and he came back to me and said, hey, we're at the Makers Fair.
Yeah, we had a couple kids try to do it. I think that was in between the spots when the noise was coming through in the background. Yeah,
we tried it as a kid.
Beth, at the length of the call, Victor Papa 2 Victor / KD9TAW, any challenges with the digital modes?
No, not on the digital modes. More of a challenge in my own brain on SSB to remember to do that. So, yeah, and I actually,
It can handle an 11 character long.
Yeah.
call time.
that was, yes, it did, no problem. And that was my first time operating split too, with a heck of a pile on SSB. So that was interesting, as Mark was telling me, roll up, roll down, like move it around. So it was mind blowing on the amount of people that were coming at me. And having, yeah, Europe only, please. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you all.
For those who go with you.
Yeah, we can talk about that.